I feel like there's a shift right now in legal as a business. And you're starting to see lawyers care much more about the business of their law firm than, not more than the practice of law, but at least as much, and at least they're paying attention. Whereas I feel like if you rewind a decade, people are just focused on being a good lawyer and
right.
The clients will come,
yeah.
right? Now they're realizing there's so many more, and there's so many more people hanging shingles and starting firms. You've got to be business oriented.
Yeah. Today on LawNext, we're going to be talking with Matt Spiegel, founder of Lawmatics. This is Bob Ambrogi, and you're listening to LawNext, the podcast that features the innovators and entrepreneurs who are driving what's next in law. And if it's a little bit noisy here, we are sitting here live at the Law Firm 500 conference, a conference put on that features the fastest growing small firms in the country. Matt and Lawmatics, somebody I've been wanting to follow up with for a while, and he happens to be here at the conference showing off his wares as an exhibitor, so I thought it was a good time to sit and talk.
We'll get to today's interview in just a moment, but first, let's hear from the sponsors who generously support LawNext. And now, on to this week's interview.
Matt, how are you doing?
I'm doing great.
Good to see you.
Always good to see you.
Good to see you. So, we've known each other for quite a while now because
almost a decade, it seems.
Huh?
Almost a decade, I think.
Almost a decade. Yeah. Wow. Because before you founded your present company, you founded MyCase.
Yes.
Yeah. So, of course, I want to talk about Lawmatics, but what was the history there? How did you go? You were a lawyer, right?
Uh-huh.
Were you practicing law?
Uh-huh. I am a lawyer still. Keep that.
We won't hold that against you.
I think it's important to keep that bar card active, I guess. But yeah, so I did practice for about 4 years at a big firm before I started my own practice. And then it was very quickly after starting my own practice that I ended up having the idea or the impetus of the idea for MyCase.
Yeah.
And then it just went from there.
Yeah. What was the impetus?
The impetus was a problem with attorney-client communication. So I did criminal defense, and that more than any other area of law, I think, has the age-old problem of attorney-client communication, and the number one complaint being failure to communicate with a client, right? And what I found was that it wasn't that they were calling for anything complicated. It wasn't like they had elaborate questions. They really just wanted to know, when was my next court date? And what's going on with like my police report or something, right? And I thought to myself that that's something that, you know what, I don't need to answer the phone in order to provide them with that information. So how cool would it be if they could just come onto my website and get that information by maybe entering in their username and their email or something that identifies them. And so that was the impetus to create a client portal that really just from my own website on my own law firm that would allow clients to get in, see when their court date was, and maybe access discovery or police reports, or for me to put a little blurb saying, "Hey, this is what I think about your case. This is where I think it might go. These are the holes. These are the things that are working against us." And when we were building that, we realized, wow, this is something that maybe other lawyers could have. That was the impetus, and then the practice management stuff just sort of came as a necessity over the first 7 months.
So you really you were focusing on the communication more than the practice management. I mean, I think a lot of people think of MyCase as a practice management. Well, it is a practice management platform, and that's what it became. And that was right. I mean, that was, I think, about 4 years maybe after like Clio and Rocket Matter had kind of gotten started. A couple less than that. 2 years.
It's a little
right
bit
around
less. That. Yeah. So I think Clio and Rocket Matter, those guys really, I think, came onto the scene in like 2008.
Yeah.
MyCase really came on in 2010. However, it really wasn't until January of 2011 that we launched, or like October of 2010, that time frame that we really launched what MyCase is today, which is the full practice management solution. So a good 3-year head start.
Yeah,
those guys had.
Yeah, and I forget whether I said to our listeners, but I should say that you're going to hear a lot of background noise during this recording. I know I said we're at a conference. We are physically right out here, and lots of people walking. They just broke for lunch. So we knew the timing would be bad, but so bear with that. But hopefully the sound works. So you're not involved with MyCase anymore. You sold the company at some point, and you continued to stay with them for a bit, and then you went off to greener pastures, or perhaps not greener, right?
Pastures.
New pastures. Different pastures.
Yeah. So we sold the company to Appfolio, which is a great company based in Santa Barbara, in 2012. And I stayed on for 2.5 years. It's staying in my capacity as effectively CEO of MyCase, GM at that point, of MyCase, and then also as a VP at Appfolio. And in 2015, March of 2015, I took off for other pastures.
Yeah. And so where did you take off to at that point?
So I did another startup for a little while. I decided to start a company called Expo Guru, which, and ironically, this is the one where everybody who knows about it always comes up and says, "Hey, did you ever do something with that?" Or "That was such a great idea." So maybe I made the wrong choice along the way, but we started that company, which was designed to help companies, marketing departments that do a lot of trade shows, which we were doing so many of.
You felt the pain of.
I felt the pain of that, and team members felt the pain really, and to help them manage all their trade shows, like where the booths are going, and all your inventory, things like that, right?
Yeah.
So we spent a lot of time building that software. Started launching it towards the end of, in October of 2015. And so not too long after I left MyCase, started to get a first few customers, and then I was recruited by a gentleman by the name of Christian Beck, who is the Australian legal software guru, the proprietor of Leap and InfoTrack and all those companies. He recruited me to come on board. I had some time left where I couldn't do anything legal related, so I went to work for a company called Cami, which was home security software and hardware, camera based, and ended up enjoying it for a while. So I never went back into legal with the Christian Beck Enterprises. I stayed as CEO of Cami for almost 2 years, going back and forth to Sydney, Australia, and then made the switch.
Yeah, and made the switch back into legal.
Back into legal.
And so this year, right? Has it been a year? It's about a year ago.
We started building it in September of 2017.
You launched Lawmatics.
Yeah, we started building. We really launched at a tech show, at least into beta.
Yeah.
And then we really only started selling heavily and kind of taking the beta label off about 3.5 months ago. 4 months ago.
So what is Lawmatics?
What is Lawmatics? Well, it's a lot.
Yeah. I know we're on video. I almost wish we could put up on a screen here, because it's nice to look at as well as to talk about.
Yeah, thank you. I appreciate that.
But we'll use words to describe it here.
It's not something that I'm actually finding that it's very hard to elevator pitch it.
Yeah.
At a conference like the one.
It's like CRM, but it's not just CRM.
It's not just CRM.
It's marketing
automation as well. So it's really, for anybody who knows certain software out there, I'd say it's the best viewed as like a combination of Salesforce and HubSpot, and for the folks that know Infusionsoft out there, it's very similar to the functionality of Infusionsoft, but very specific for law firms. I think this is something that, I'm sure you have great opinions on as well, but the definition of a CRM is so fluid.
Yeah.
And kind of all over the place. Kind of hard to lock down one definition of what a CRM is. And we think it entails a lot more than just, sort of a database of your contacts.
Yeah.
So
it's, by no planning whatsoever, it just so happens that on a recent episode of this podcast, I had interviewed the Lexicata folks, which is a CRM, cloud-based CRM product for lawyers that kind of started as a cloud-based it started as a cloud-based platform, was just acquired by Clio, and there seems to be this sort of people kind of get that, I think. I think they see maybe you and them as competitors, but I think you would say that you're really not.
I would disagree. Yeah. And I think most people, actually, ironically enough, Jack Newton and I, from Clio, were chatting about this just in the last couple of weeks. About how
and you integrate with Clio too.
And we integrate with Clio, and we have a very great relationship with Clio. And we see it as a very different product. And maybe it's because we're a bit more intimate with our knowledge of what the software does and what the differences are. It's understandable that the market might view it as the same, but it is a much different product. It's CRM is a portion of what we do. So what Lexicata does, that functionality is definitely built into Lawmatics, but it goes far beyond just the CRM and really goes into the marketing side, which are things like email marketing, drip campaigns, building one-on-one automated customer journeys, things that are really designed to increase the engagement that someone has with your firm during an intake process or during a lead process, increase that conversion rates. And really, in my opinion, at the end of the day, which I think is so cool that you're starting to see the legal industry start to focus on this, but provide a better just customer experience. Like actually focus on customer service a little bit. Lawmatics, those
before
kinds
they're your customers.
Before they're your customers. And then even after they're your customer. When their case is over, Lawmatics is just as much about when their case is over as it is about before their case has begun. So that aspect, that customer service is like, I feel like it's overreaching a lot of things in the legal industry now, and that's a really good thing, in my opinion.
When you thought of starting Lawmatics, what was the problem that you saw? What was missing in the legal industry that you thought needed to be addressed?
Yeah, that's a good question. This is not a new opportunity, right? This is something that I identified as an opportunity at my case 5 years ago, right? And the writing was on the wall. We were hearing feedback from customers saying these kinds of tools. Now, maybe they don't know how to say it, but you can read what they're asking for and be like, that's marketing automation, that's CRM.
Because my case and other products, and they're all evolving, but they basically pick up at the point that you sign the client. But that's only part of the picture, because there's a whole lot happens before you sign that client.
You're absolutely right. And what's really cool, and you come to a conference like this, and and again, we're at the Law Firm 500 conference, and I think you know this better than anybody, but you start to see, I feel like there's a shift right now in legal as a business. And you're starting to see lawyers care much more about the business of their law firm than, not more than the practice of law, but at least as much, and at least they're paying it attention. Whereas I feel like if you rewind a decade, people are just focused on being a good lawyer and the clients will come, right? Now they're realizing there's so many more people hanging shingles and starting firms. You've got to be business oriented.
Yeah. So, I've talked to a few lawyers here this morning who are saying they've really just been realizing that in the last year or two.
Exactly.
Coming to that after long careers practicing.
Exactly. And so where practice management has always been really good for the stuff that they traditionally have been focused on, now they're starting to focus on their business. So that brings in this idea of these are tools that we've used at our companies for a decade. Ever since I started my case, we've used Salesforce or we've used Marketo. These are tools that are ever present. They've been around for a long time, but they've never been in legal. And it's because lawyers, I don't think, have really seen the value or thought about the need for them. But now they're starting to do that.
Larger firms have used some of that stuff, perhaps.
For sure, larger firms have.
In small market, you're not seeing that.
No,
you haven't been seeing it.
You haven't been. Now there's a shift.
Yeah.
And so that's the opportunity, I think, for us.
Yeah. And so what did you want? When you say that it's a lot more than a CRM, can you give me an example of how a lawyer would use this? How a client might move through the process of becoming a client?
I'll give you a great example. I'll start with an example for after a case is over, because to me that's the most impactful, and I think the lowest hanging fruit for most law firms is their book of business that they're just sitting on.
Yeah. And
if you talk to most law firms out there, Bob, and you know this too, I'm sure, that they're just sitting on them, right? They're sitting on all their old clients, not doing anything.
Yeah.
And so by building a workflow in Lawmatics, building a drip campaign that takes control once that case is closed. As soon as you mark that case closed, you have a year-long campaign. Which is
so a drip campaign is a series of emails that'll go out,
and it's not marketing, right? You're not spamming them with with junk that they don't want.
Yeah,
you're sending them checking in on them. Hey, how are you? Want to make sure that everything is going really well for you. Maybe even personalized touches, right? And pepper that throughout the course of a year. And that's just great customer service. You're going to leave a great impression with that client, and they're going to be inclined to send you more business. They're going to be thinking about you so that if someone else needs a lawyer, they're going to be like, oh, I remember my lawyer, he was great. And even though maybe they used them a year ago, they're still right at the top of their mind because you're hitting them with these drip campaigns. So that's a really good example on the back end. On the front end, a great example is automating the process, right? So like when someone's ready to hire you, typically now, just from a time standpoint, you've got a paralegal, let's say, and lawyer says Joe Smith is ready to hire us. You got to prepare the fee agreement. You got to bring it up. You got to fill out all Joe Smith's information. You got to send it out to them for signature. You got to wait for it to come back. Then you want to send them out an invoice to get paid. Well, a great idea in Lawmatics would be to build an automated flow that all you have to do is mark a button that says they're ready to hire, and the entire process of creating that fee agreement, sending it out to them to be signed, getting it back, and once it's returned to you, you send out the invoice for signature. That entire process is taken care of 100% automatically. Yeah. And so not only are you saving a ton of time, but you're also making the process much smoother for the client.
Yeah. I mean, you analogized to HubSpot, and HubSpot would let you kind of, I guess, create and manage campaigns. What do you do around building and managing campaigns?
Yeah, good question. So that's the other aspect of Lawmatics. It's all about data, right? And so we allow you to track all of your campaigns right in Lawmatics, and we actually give you the ability to automatically source people that are coming to your website and filling out a form to get a hold of you. We can automatically tell you whether it comes from Facebook, whether it comes from Google, whether it comes from wherever. We're the only people in legal that even have a system like CallRail on our radar. And we have a CallRail system built into Lawmatics, which allows you to, for those of you that don't know what CallRail is, it allows you to do dynamic number insertion. So, there's an age-old problem where it's like someone calls into my firm, how the heck do I know where they came from? Maybe they saw my ad on Google, but instead of clicking, they called, right? Yeah. And so, I think, most of your listeners and most lawyers, when they're doing a pay-per-click campaign, they have their phone number right there. Right. So someone calls, you have no idea. But if you have a unique number assigned to that ad, then you can know where they called from. So Lawmatics allows you to automatically attribute phone call sources as well. Yeah. And then giving you the ability to slice and dice that data and see how are people getting to your firm, where are they coming from, the value of those clients from each particular source, your conversion rates, source by source, really breaking the data down into super granular bits so you can really understand where your money's going and how it's coming back out. Yeah.
Why does that matter for lawyers to know that?
Oh, it doesn't. Yeah, it doesn't. No, I mean, it's so important, right? Like, I mean, my whole thing, I've always been of this mindset that you should never spend any money on marketing that you can't track. Yeah. Because it's just, and even if you think it's going to work, don't spend it if you can't track it, because you're throwing money at it. And if you're doing multiple marketing sources and you're throwing money at all of them, you have no idea which ones are working, because the odds are they're not all working great. Yeah. Right. And so you're just wasting money on at least one of them probably. Yeah. So if you can't track a marketing source, I don't think you should be doing it. Yeah. And so giving you the ability to track all your marketing sources, how much money you're spending on them, what your return on that investment is, I think it's the cornerstone of a good business.
Yeah. Do lawyers understand that? I mean, are you finding that an easy sell or a hard sell?
That's a good question. I think it depends, right? Like, so, I mean, here, Law Firm 500. Yeah. These are all attorneys that
which for people who aren't familiar with this, I mean, this is a very marketing-heavy conference. It's all about building and growing a successful law firm.
Yeah, and I'd say most of these firms probably have seen a lot of success in the last year or two, right? Yeah. Maybe even longer if they've been with the system for longer. Yeah. But so there are a lot of lawyers that do get it. But you're right that it does require a bit of education. to help them understand. I do think most lawyers at this point understand the value of email marketing, and I think it's a function of just our everyday society, right? And everyone uses Amazon, and they know that if you use Amazon, you're going to get emails promoting things, and everyone these days gets spammy emails, right?
Yeah.
But so the idea of email marketing and things is obvious. It's very omnipresent. Everyone kind of gets it.
Yeah.
The law firms that don't do a lot of marketing, those are the ones that are harder to have them understand the value of it.
Yeah.
And a lot of times those are people that maybe they aren't ready for a system as sophisticated and powerful as Lawmatics.
Yeah.
But my hunch where I think the industry is going is that every law firm is going to be mindful of these things in the next few years.
Yeah.
We'll get back to my interviews in just a moment. But first, let's take a break to hear from the sponsors who generously support LawNext. And now, let's continue this week's interview.
How well does your platform accommodate different areas of law practice, different practice specialties? If I'm a PI lawyer, if I'm a immigration lawyer, does it work equally as well for whatever the practice is?
It does. It works really well. I mean, look, it's all about the volume, I think, that you bring in. I always like to say, just like kind of my case was, our target was very consumer-driven law practices, right?
Yeah.
The family law, the criminal defense, the bankruptcy, the estate planning, the personal injury, right?
Yeah.
All the usual suspects. But I think this one is a bit more of a volume play. If you're a personal injury firm and you only get 2 new leads a month, you might not need a sophisticated CRM to keep track of things and to help you, because you're probably converting 100% of those, right? And the flip side is a corporate firm, which typically wouldn't be our target, right? But if there could be a high volume corporate firm out there, and they could benefit from it. So I think it's more about the volume that you're seeing come in, than it is about the practice of law.
Yeah. What about the sources of the volume? If they're heavily focused on Google, or if they're heavily focused on Facebook or something like that, does it all work in terms of your platform?
Yeah, it all works. I mean, even, you still see, and I think this is a really valuable tool, especially estate planning lawyers, they do a ton of workshops.
Yeah.
And these guys are going out there and putting on workshops with the idea of hoping to generate leads.
Yeah.
Spending a lot of money to do it.
Yeah.
We track that, right? We help you
analyze.
analyze.
Do you track that?
Because you can create a campaign for that particular conference, and you can very easily enter in how much money you spent on it. And then when people come in, you can build a specific form in our system that is tied to that conference.
Yeah.
So when they fill out that form, which is what the law firms typically do at the conference, it will automatically tell you that this person came from that conference. So now going forward, you know exactly where they came from, and you can track all the stats on that.
Yeah.
And you can send, special messages based on that conference and things like that.
It's a cloud-based platform, but I can't just go plop down a credit card and start using it, right?
No, not yet, which is very different than what we did in my case.
Yeah.
Right?
So how does it work? How do I get started?
Yeah, so in order to get started with Lawmatics, you contact us. We're going to want to walk you through a demo, and we really like to make sure that you're going to be a good fit for Lawmatics, because like we just were talking about, right? There's a lot of firms that maybe aren't a great fit. And so we don't want to shoehorn you into something that isn't going to work for you. It's not going to be good for the firm. It's not going to be good for us. So we spend the time giving you a demo of the software and understanding your firm and making sure it's good. And then from there, we go through onboarding. We have onboarding options, and it's something really special about Lawmatics. And one of our options gives us the ability to really build a system for the law firm to work with them and actually create an environment, an ecosystem that is going to work for them out of the box.
Yeah.
And then you're off and running from there.
Yeah, and they pay a fee for that. There's
a monthly subscription fee after the setup fee.
fee.
And the monthly subscription fee is we're finding is very affordable compared to the other options that are out there. If you want to do something like this with software that's not legal specific, that stuff's expensive.
Yeah,
things like HubSpot, Marketo.
Yeah,
those are pricey pieces of software.
Yeah. So you're a tech veteran at this point. I mean, you started your own company. You've worked at other companies.
For better or for worse.
Yeah, for better. Well, for better overall, right?
Yeah.
What did you learn from all of that you brought to starting Lawmatics? Or what mistakes did you want to avoid that you made in the past
Well, I'm first of all trying to be a lot happier, more open with this company. When I started MyCase, I feel like I was green. I was a kid, in a lot of ways. I had been a lawyer for a few years, but I was a kid, and I can be aggressive. I can be kind of come at you.
Yeah.
And I don't know that, and I had that approach when I started MyCase. And if I have any regrets, it might be that. Like I might have taken a much softer approach to things. And we were kind of like the wild kids of legal when we first came on.
Yeah.
MyCase,
Like talking about social media and crazy stuff like that back when nobody else was.
Yeah, doing that stuff. And God, I remember we were like, and I think the tradition has carried on, but we didn't want to give away cheesy swag at ABA Tech shows, so we just brought a keg and started giving alcohol away. And I think to this day, they still do it. So, I think I'm in a different place, and like I have a much different approach to things now. And whereas I think I used to be really, really competitive, and I think that actually for entrepreneurs, I think competitiveness can be a really good thing. But I think it can actually become a bad thing if it gets too far, too personal. And so I'm trying to have a really good time with the industry now and like partner with as many people as we can and have a bit of a different approach. So that's something that I think is different, something that I learned and maybe I would do differently. Business-wise, you learn a lot of things about raising money and when to raise money, and I hate raising money.
Yeah.
And I want to raise as little money as possible, but sometimes you have to. And so I think I have a pretty good understanding of what to do and when to do it. Legal itself comes with a lot of, there's a lot of different ways to go after the legal market.
Yeah.
Right? And some of those things work really well and some don't.
Yeah.
I think I'm fortunate enough now to have a good playbook and understand like the things that don't work in legal, maybe some of the things that do work a little better, and try to focus on those things, obviously.
Yeah. I think you still have a little bit of that competitive edge in you, Matt. After I mentioned a few of your competitors this morning, I could see the fire in your eyes. So
there is still some of that competitive edge, but it's a much softer approach now.
Yeah. Where are you in that fundraising cycle?
Yeah, that's a good question. We're pretty active right now.
Yeah.
I think we'll have some pretty big announcements in the next few weeks, maybe a month or so.
Yeah, has this all been self-funded up until now? Or
it's all no. We have raised money.
You've got some money.
We've raised pretty substantial. So look, the one thing that's interesting about raising money is it's much easier the second time around.
Yeah, yeah.
I can remember trying to raise money for MyCase. It was the hardest thing in the world. Not the least of which was because people didn't understand the legal market. It was still 2008, 2009, 2010. People didn't get it.
Yeah.
It's not as sexy as it is now.
Yeah. Suddenly it's hot.
And there wasn't deal flowing, a lot of money flowing into legal at all back then. So it was damn hard to try to get money back then.
Yeah.
Now legal itself is a lot easier to get money. And I think the fact that I've done it before successfully gives me a leg up in raising money at this point. So we've raised a fair amount up to this point to kind of get things started. And now we're going to go raise what will probably be either a seed round or a Series A, and raise a few $1 million and try to hit the gas pedal.
Yeah, and with all that cash lining your pockets, what's the next steps for Lawmatics? Where do you want to take this?
Well, we got to get that cash first.
Yeah.
We got to put the cash in the pockets.
Yeah.
So. A lot of people ask, and I think you've even asked me once before, and a lot of people do. I feel like it's a very common question to ask, but like, what's your exit? You potential acquisition here, or, this team might buy you, or this team might buy you. And my advice to people, and it's what I like to try to practice myself. I don't like, I do some investing myself, and if I talk to a team And I asked them that question, and they're like, oh yeah, our goal is to sell this company in 2 years. I'm out. And I understand other investors might invest, but I'm out.
Yeah.
Because I think it's important to build a great company. And I don't think, there are exceptions, but I think if your goal is to just build something to sell, I'm not sure that you make the right decisions.
Right.
Like I feel like you end up cutting corners here, or like setting the company up in a way that isn't necessarily ideal.
Yeah.
And so where I want to take this thing is I want to build something amazing. I want to build something that doesn't get acquired. I want to build something that acquires other companies.
Yeah.
And, whatever happens along the way will happen along the way.
Yeah.
But that's my goal.
Yeah.
And that's the way I want to
It must get hard, though, when you're talking about raising money to not be having that conversation, because the people who are putting money into your company, they want to know where it's going.
And I think the idea is to just focus on building a good company and know that, like, look, if you build a great company, something is going to happen along the way. Either you're going to have an exit offer that makes sense and you evaluate it at the time. But I just don't like saying this is my goal is to sell it in 5 years or whatever.
Yeah.
My goal is to build a great company and what happens along the way.
Yeah.
You're either going to then get acquired or you're going to IPO.
Yeah.
Right? I mean, something good is going to happen if you build a great company.
Yeah.
I just fear for companies who want to build something quick and sell it. And then if they don't, you're kind of up the creek without a paddle, so to speak, right? Like now you have a not very well set up company that you thought you were going to be getting rid of, and now you have it. And so now what do you do with it?
Yeah. What about for the product itself? Does it continue to do what it does, or does it expand beyond that? Or do you see where do you see the product going?
You always ask the best questions, Bob. So I think focus is really important, and we are hyper focused on being a great CRM and marketing automation platform. And I think it's very important for software companies. It's as much about what you say no to as it is about what you say yes to. And so the product will always be a CRM and marketing automation platform. And I don't think that we will try to expand beyond that at all. To be really good at that, we need to focus. So we have so much development to still do on the platform itself. And so I think that the next 18 months at least of development is just purely focused on the functionality we have, making it a bit better, we just only do customer-driven features at this point. So if our customers haven't asked for it, we're probably not going to build it. Yeah. But our customers are super vocal. Yeah. They ask for a lot. And so that's what we're going to spend time delivering.
Great. The floor is yours for any closing thoughts. Anything else you want to say about Lawmatics, the business of legal technology, anything else before we wrap up?
I'll be honest with you. And you know what, Bob, it's kind of funny. And I've never said this to you before, but you're one of the reasons I'm back in legal. Because
that's a scary thought.
Maybe it is, right? But no, it's everybody. I'll tell you what I love about this. It's a community, right? And the thing that's cool about legal tech is that it's actually a pretty small community. Yeah. And we see each other at events like a few times a year, and it's just like a good thing. And I actually found myself missing the community, believe it or not. And that's when I realized I needed to come back. I was doing this, like my conferences were CES, right? And I go to CES, I'm like, oh my God, this is insane. I know nobody here. There's 14 different venues, you know what I mean? And it was uncomfortable. Yeah. And I didn't know it that well at all. And so I started to miss that, that intimacy of the industry. Yeah. And hanging out with guys like you and so many of the others that we get to see and that we have such good relationships with. And I was like, you know what, I want to come back. And then it was like, there's this opportunity to come back. So I'm really excited about being back in legal tech. I know the space really well, and I think this time around we've got something that is solving a bigger problem. Yeah. And I think where we can go with it, there are some really cool routes that we can take, and I'm kind of excited to see where that goes.
Yeah. Well, welcome back.
Yeah, thank you. Thanks for having me.
And thanks for being on my podcast. It's been a pleasure to talk to you.
Of course.
And thanks for taking time out of this busy show to sit and do it.
Oh, yeah. Anytime.
Good to see you.
Anytime. Likewise.
Thanks.
Salud.
Well, that does it for this episode of LawNext. Hope you enjoyed it. If you like what you heard, head on over to the Apple Podcast Store. Leave us some positive comments there. It always helps us. And thanks for listening. This is Bob Ambrogi. See you next time.